Hi there, I'm Downstatic, and in addition to desperately needing a haircut, desperately needing to clean my room before I move in a week, I desperately need to talk to you guys about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was promised to us at E3 of this year by Square Enix. Now, there are probably people out there who are more excited about this remake than me, but not many. I've been talking about the need to remake Final Fantasy VII for a long time, and it's gotten kind of to a breaking point. The audience which would appreciate this is now, a little bit older. The people who have been exposed to it maybe through the re-releases on, say, Steam or something. That game's actually pretty hard to play if you go back and you do it now, because the graphics are just so... They're trying to be 3D, but they're so bad. I mean, at the time it was great, but now you look back and it's like, play 7 and then play 8 and it's this world of difference. Like, you can count on one hand the polygons that encompass Cloud's hand, for instance, or his head, or his hair. Actually, his hair probably has more polygons than anything, because that's Japan. So, they were really nearing a point where the people who would have consumed this material in its original form are no longer going to want to, because it's just too old. Now, my friend sent me an article, and we argued for probably 3 hours about this. We argued about this 2-sentence response to a question. The question was, it's not just an HDification, right? The response was, Final Fantasy VII is special, and we can't exceed the game by simply making the graphics nicer. That's not a thing to be excited about. Precisely because it's a full remake, I want to challenge what's fun and what's possible now. That's a noble goal. I'll say that first of all. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for them, because, as I'll get into, they've been doing a lot of good things. And sometimes they try things and they don't work, but I think they're learning. My friend was despondent over this. He texted me at work and was like, Downstatic, he doesn't call me that. Actually, he does sometimes, kind of weird. He knows my name. He's like, Downstatic, man, I was so psyched for this, and now I'm so pissed. They're taking the turn-based combat away. They say that there's no way that they can improve on the game without doing that. I was like, alright, well, get off the ledge for a second, and let me tell you, let me put it back into perspective. Yes, they might be taking away the turn-based combat, but it never had turn-based combat. It had active time battle combat, which they'd been doing since 4. And there wasn't really any change to it. 4 had it, 5 had it, 6 had it, 7 had it, 8 had it, 9 had it. They all had it. It wasn't until 10 that we got something that was really different. And then they started going and trying new systems. 10, you had that modified turn-based system where you could influence when people were going in the turn order by what kind of moves you used. Like, quick hit comes to mind. Haste, slow, all that stuff. 12 had the gambit system, which was misguided. Maybe it turned out better in the international version, but I never got to play it because I live in America. Actually, I live in New Jersey. Pride. So, besides that, it was actually not the worst. They wanted to... I think the spirit of it was that they wanted to try to, give people who wanted to play a multiplayer game the experience of playing a multiplayer game while you're still playing a single-player game. Kind of cool, kind of not, but a neat idea. I don't think that they're going to go that far with this. I look at Final Fantasy VII, and I look at the original battle system, and I look at the way that they constructed the characters, which, by the way, the third sentence right after this says there won't be any new characters, which, other than, say, maybe the Turks or something, I don't see where they would have shoehorned in somebody from the regular plot. I'm glad for it. So let's look at it. They had all these characters, not even all that many. I think you had, what? I'm not going to count them for people who, God forbid, haven't played the game, but, there was like 8 characters, 9 characters that you could pick from by the end of the game. Other than their limit breaks and their stats, they didn't really feel that different. I made this argument earlier today, you could take Cloud, and you could throw a bunch of black magic materia on him, you could throw him in the back row, and you could say, alright, well, Cloud is my black mage. Never mind the fact that, all racism aside, the best black mage was Barret. Cloud was just not effective that way. In addition, it didn't feel right, He's got the Buster Sword, he's got the tough, he's got the spirit, he's got the grit. Tons of HP. He should be on the front line, he's got to be hitting things. Look at someone like Red 13. Red 13's got these kind of support abilities, but I mean, one of his limit breaks is that he goes berserk. It's like his characters were not very cohesive. And what I did was I compared it to 13. For those of you who didn't play 13, I'll sum it up real quick for you. I brought up the character of Snow. Snow is a really weird character. That game had 6 combat roles that you could have, and the whole point was not necessarily who had what combat role, but what combat roles you used in conjunction with each other. Snow was a really effective commando, heavy damage dealer, and guardian, tank. Those were his 2 most effective roles. But as you got to endgame, you needed a certain combination of abilities as a synergist, which was the pure buffing class. Snow had those abilities if you built him to it. This kind of paralleled the story a little bit, because Snow comes off in the beginning as this like hero, like I'm gonna save everybody, I'm gonna be the leader, and he eventually comes to realize that he can't do that alone. He needs other people. He needs to support other people, and then you discover that he is this great support character, both internal to the story and in the combat system. I thought that was so cool. I mean, maybe I was reading into it a lot because I kind of was trying to read into the story of that game. I wanted it to be, really compelling, and I wanted them to make those kind of neat connections. But if they did a similar-ish, I hope that they don't do the same thing, but if they did a similar-ish thing with these characters where you give them more of a feel, like, okay, now Cloud, maybe he has a little bit of black magic, but you can't give him, like, Blizzaga, you can't give him, Knights of the Round. He's not able to use those abilities, but in exchange, he gets all these combat abilities. He gets Death Blow, he gets, Attack all this good stuff. I mean, the materia system was really, really strong for what it was. It was clever, but that was all in the menus. When you actually got into combat, all you had was your commands. That was it. Like, it doesn't feel quite as hollow now, or I guess it didn't feel quite as hollow then. It feels a little bit hollow now. Like, alright, well, when you look at a game like 10, you had Orin, who had his whole sub-command list of different kinds of breaks that he could do. That's just the Knight class from previous Final Fantasies. You look at Kimari and his blue magic. There was the enemy skill materia, which was the same deal. They always do that. So anyway, he was really, really getting on my case about it. He wouldn't let it go, and I started trying to bring up other games, trying to say, like 10-2. Maybe you didn't like the dress spheres. Personally, I didn't like the aesthetics of the dress spheres. I thought they were kind of unnecessary. It was like targeting a market that didn't really need to be targeted, I feel. Maybe it did. I don't know. I'm not a marketing person at Square Enix. But, when you brought the game over here, yeah, diehard fans are going to buy it. The exact quote that my friend said something like, I tried as quickly and painfully to get through that game as possible. I never wanted to put a Final Fantasy down more in my life. And I didn't feel that strongly about it. But when I was playing the system with the dress spheres, I thought that the mid-combat job change was really cool. You have, oh, I'm a white mage, but all of a sudden, like, I don't need to heal anymore. Boom, I'm not a white mage. Now I'm a black mage. I'm gonna fuck you up. Again, they don't have to do that. But my point is, don't be attached to this turn-based combat and to the old systems that it had. It's like writing poetry. When you have a framework to work off of, you are forcing your poem to rhyme. You are writing in a stanza format, like a sestina or something really challenging like that. Under those conditions, you can really write something phenomenal. Like, the limits you put on yourself force you to grow as a writer. I think a lot of the problem that they've had with recent Final Fantasies, and, games in general, I had my review of Bravely Default, and I loved that game, but it has a little bit of storyline challenges too. Atmosphere. 7's atmosphere is amazing. Oh my god. Like, just the city of Midgard, and then when you get out of Midgard in the first couple of hours of the game, and you realize, holy shit, that's just one city in this world? And that music plays on the overworld map, and you're running around and you don't even know, like, and you come to some, like, tiny village, and it's like, I'm in a world here. I'm in a different world. And you get the different stages of the airship and the chocobos, and you could just go everywhere. It was a very expansive and invoked wanderlust in people. That kind of atmosphere, they've kind of really been lacking a little bit. I felt it somewhat when you go to Pulse in 13, but it was so far into the game at that point that I was just like, I don't know, it reached me, but it also, I can see how it wouldn't have. I mean, someone probably jaded by that point. 12 had a very expansive world, but there wasn't that overworld feel, there wasn't that exploration, you're just running from zone to zone to zone. The cities are like similar enough that you don't really get this huge feel. I mean, look at the difference between Midgard and Nibelheim. It's amazing. It's unreal. Like, this tiny village, which is where everything began, versus this enormous Magitech city that has this rotten core, but maybe it's not so rotten. Maybe there's people trying to save it, and you're not the only ones. It just, all this stuff that served to make the game so phenomenal. I remember having so many just discussions about the story of the game, which, granted, probably due to translation errors. Like, things were cryptic where they didn't really need to be, and characters were not as direct as they needed to be. It was a little difficult to figure out where, say Cloud ended and Zack began. Sorry, spoilers. I'm gonna put that somewhere, I swear. Though, maybe the statute of limitations is passed on that. I mean, come on, guys. 7 came out when I was in, like, middle school. But yeah, so working within this framework of a world and an atmosphere that you already have this requirement for will force them to keep that tone, I feel, when they start doing things like putting in job classes. You're not going to see something like the mascot class, which was in 10.2, which was a pretty strong class, but like, as a mascot, the girls dressed up. It's like one of them was a Moogle. Like, I love Moogles, but I don't want to I don't want Tifa to dress up like a Moogle. Tifa is a monk. Tifa goes hard with her fists, and I should do a whole segment on just Tifa, because she is the heroine of that game, and they don't give her enough credit, and she's just a really phenomenal character, especially if you consider the Japanese storytelling and how they treat their women. But Tifa, I mean, I love Tifa. She's my girl, but putting her aside, she's the monk. She's not going to be going out and punching people with like little boxing gloves or pillows. No, she's going to have like brass knuckles. She's going to have, a punching dagger, something vicious that she can really bite into somebody with, and it's going to be in incredible graphics, just beyond anything you've seen, because that's how they did. Every time they put out a new game, they do this. Another thing they do every time they put out a new game is they haven't been doing it as much lately, but they build a whole engine for it. My friend rightly pointed out that the game industry is one of the ones that we expect them to do this. Almost every time they release a new game, we want them to make a new engine. We want them to be, bigger and faster and have more capabilities, and it needs to be cool, and like all this stuff. We don't hold any other industry to that standard. I think, what did he say? Like, I actually busted out laughing at work and I almost got in trouble. It was like, you don't expect that level of innovation from a toaster company. You just want it to toast your bread. I'm in the middle ground somewhere, as I always am. I think that building a new engine, forces a lot of change. So maybe it forces you to not be complacent. But then on the other hand, it's a zero-sum game. If you are sacrificing writing in order to make a new engine, and it's an RPG, like, you can't afford to do that. The story is what's going to keep people playing. I mean, most of these battles are just going to be the same thing over and over until you get to the boss battles. So why are people going to be playing it? They're going to be playing it because they're attached to these characters, because they want to know how the story ends. They want to feel like they were a part of it. They've already got that in 7. It's written. It's done. It was beautiful. It is beautiful. It can be beautiful again. The fact that they're not putting in new characters reinforces to me that they're going to stay 110% true to the story. They're going to put elements of the story that you used to have to reach for. Say like, well, this is probably true, but now it's going to be true. That's what I think is going to come out of this. And then that is going to free up their dev team to really think about, how can I make a game that is not only compelling in its story and in its art, but that is just fun to play. Like, fun again. you know? People are going to be playing this who, there'll be new ones, of course, but the majority of people I think who are going to be playing this are going to be old fans. We played the original. We logged so many hours it capped out at 99, 99, 99. We bred so many chocobos, we raced them all day long. We gathered and mastered all the materia. We used every trick in the book to bring Eris back, and none of them worked. Not even the one where you went underwater and looked for the white materia. I tried it. We're going to be coming into this game, and there's going to have to be something for us too. Sorry, but that's true. And if they choose to challenge us by giving us a tactical type system that they had in 13, I'm not going to fault them for it. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. I have faith and I have hope, and I think a lot of people were rightfully wary when this kind of news came out, especially because they've been saying for so long, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. There's no reason. Until we exceed it, we're not going to do it. And now they're saying, they're kind of throwing in the towel a little bit. They're saying, like, well, the only thing that can exceed 7, along the same vein, is 7. We just have to find a way to do it. I hope that they don't let that goal consume them, because the further you get away from what 7 was, the worse response you're gonna get from the true fans. We will always buy your games. Sorry, Square, other fans, whatever, like, a boycott would never work because we wouldn't ever commit to it. Like, we'd see the commercial, we'd watch your review, we'd buy it. And rightfully so, as soon as they announce 7, I'm gonna buy it, having never heard word one about whatever combat system they have, whatever changes they're gonna make. I don't care. I need it. I'm going to have it. And I'm sure, I know that I'm not the only one, because even my friend who told me, down static, I can't stand this, I'm gonna buy the game, but I'm gonna be so pissed off about it. He's gonna buy it. Their money, they already have our money, is what I'm trying to say. So why not do what every artist dreams of doing? Don't work for the money. Work for the posterity. This is a game for your legacy. This will be scrutinized for decades. This is what happens with this remake will determine the fate of remakes. I actually don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that, because this is a game that had I've not seen a game ever that has cried out more for a remake, and whose fans have cried out more for a remake. Every time they gave us something new, we said, well, where's Final Fantasy VII? Where's our Final Fantasy VII remake? The graphics needed to be updated. Just give us new graphics. That's all we want. And now they're saying, well, we're going to give you new graphics. We're going to give you something else too. We're going to give you a new game. It's going to be the same game, but it's going to be a new game. If anyone can do it, I believe in them. There's only one thing that I really have to hope that they don't do, and it's change the soundtrack. Do whatever you want, honestly, to the combat. I will play it. But don't take those songs away from us. The music, that's the atmosphere that I'm talking about. What the Final Fantasy series is so notorious for is its music. Nobuo Uematsu is an amazing composer. He's got some inborn talent that no one that I've ever seen. I'll give credit to some other people. Michiko Naruke, for once, I think that's her name, who does Wild Arms. She does a great job. She really does, of giving you a Wild West Japanese feel, like the Japanese take on the Wild West and Aliens. But Nobuo Uematsu, I said it to someone today. If you play, and I'm not going to do it because it will happen, if you play the piano theme from Final Fantasy X, I believe it's called Tizanarkand, I will cry. I will actually cry, because of the emotions that evoked in me. I can't help it. If you play Battle on the Big Bridge, I'm gonna be psyched like you had just played Eye of the Tiger, or right now, Van Halen. Like, that's gonna pump me up just as much. It's from a video game. Maybe I'm a Lion. That won awards in Japan. It was Song of the Year, I think. It's a video game final boss fight music. What? Who can do that? Nobuo Uematsu. That's who can do that. So, do whatever you want to the combat. Please, join me in trusting them. We've trusted them so far. They may have led us a little bit astray, but I think they're taking us on a journey, and I think that that journey is worth it. And I guess if worse comes to worse, you can just play the soundtrack over when you are in the different areas or fighting or whatever the case may be. Alright. I am Down Static, and that's all the time I've got. See you guys.